Good day, everyone. Sometimes just a listening ear will do. Again, when I was doing rideshare, like I've stated before on videos prior, I've had many opportunities to be of service by helping people, clients, customers, whatever word one could come up with. There were a lot of rides where I just did a lot of listening. I was truly just a listening ear. Sometimes they're not. They were venting. And then there was other times I was a listening ear because the volume was up so loud and I didn't really have any music playing because I was a respectable one, meaning I wasn't an individual to always have their music blasting or their podcast blasting when someone was in the car. Now that wasn't always the case, and that's a video for another day. That was not always the case. However, I learned a great deal. I had men in my vehicle sitting in the back, complaining about their job, complaining about their relationship, complaining about their days. And of course, I've had women get in the car as well and vent about their supervisor at work, their badass kids. But I still love them though. That's what they will always say at the end. I still love them though. What would I do without my babies? And in some cases that was true. In other cases it's still true. But when you learn that the kid is like 16, I'm like, they grown, you know, depending on where you from. In the United States, they almost grown. In other parts of the world, they grown. Um, and then of course I had couples that got into the vehicle. They asked me some questions, um, but a question would lead to like a conversation between the couple in the back. Like one time I was asked, I'm trying to remember, it was so long ago. Um, I was asked about happy wife, happy life, and I was like, I've never been married, so I can't really answer that. And then the Mister and the Missus both took their turns. Well, hey, let me tell you this. How the man would, start his diatribe, and he would say, he would give his opinions on why he believed in happy wife, happy life. And then, of course, the woman would get into why she okayed happy wife, happy life. And I was like, okay, you know, I really couldn't speak on it. I can only could do hypotheticals, but this isn't fantasy, so I can't speak on marriage until I get married. That's kind of always been my stance. So all I can do is give an opinion, but experience is the best teacher. So it's all trial and error until you actually in it to win it, as they say. Um, but have you ever thought that you couldn't listen? Get into doing rideshare. You will be listening a lot, a great deal. Now you will get breaks when you have individuals that get into your car, clients get into your backseat and fall asleep, or they may have their headphones on. But more times than not, if they're not talking on the phone to someone, they are venting to you, and I mean venting, not the venting where they take a break, and if you want to chime in, you could chime in. But I've had a few folks get in the back of my vehicle, and I'd be like, man, they need some water because their mouth gonna be dry because they just yakking. And of course, I'm all for it because they're helping me as I'm helping them, though I'm helping them in more than one way. And actually, come to think about it, they were helping me in more than one way too. So driving to where I need to get him or her to and just listening. I'm like, man, I thought I had drama in my life, but I did. Of course, I did. When I was watching TNT, because that's the only time I've ever truly dealt with drama. But they really had some drama. I was like, wow, interesting. That's all I could think. And at the conclusion of the rise, no matter how far the distance was, I was always told via how I was compensated. And in the comments, they would leave me reviews and be like, "Hey, I love that you just let me vent about my day or vent about my problems. You didn't have the yuck face. And of course, my face too beautiful to have a yuck face. I mean, I can't get mad because life happens to everyone, so that's ridiculous. Why would I be mad when I'm being of service? I'm helping you get that anger up out of your system. Knowing what I know now, I would just say, hey, you probably just need a nap or you need a vacation. You know, but through it all, I will admit when I was just a listening ear, and when I went to get my analysis, I really couldn't because they did all the talking. We were already at their destination. So all I could do was ponder on what would I do in that situation. One, despite what people may think and the narratives that may be pushed, I know you all that do ride share may be driving or just riding in the back or in the front. Because I know I've heard some people let you sit in the front, even when it's just you by yourself. I was never one of those individuals, but I've heard there's some out there. But um, it's just like, yeah, we all have free will. And since we all have free will, or as some folks have said along my ways of life, my days, the illusion of free will. We still have the choice. That is a fact. We have a choice. And yes, the choice comes with a consequence. So I was like, I really wouldn't have been doing all that complaining when I hopped into someone's car. I would have probably just, asked them how their day was going, small talk, even though I'm not really fond of small talk. Ask them how their day was going, and then I'll probably get on my phone and do some research or something. But yeah, people was the stuff that most folks was complaining about. There were solutions to it. People were talking about their relationship. They always could have voted with their feet and stepped. Left, right, left. They could have get the stepping, as Martin once said back in the day on the show. They could have just left. And then of course, there were folks would hop in the car and be telling me about their job and how they hate their boss. And I'm like, I get it, necessities, bills. I want to advise any individual to quit their profession unless they have something else lined up. But in the meantime, they could be trying to start something on the side. So one day they can be like, surprise, surprise. They could put in a 2 weeks notice. And if they just beyond the ethics, they cannot even put in a 2 weeks notice. They can just bounce. You know. I mean, I wouldn't advise that. But if you do it, I'm not mad at you because I'm not the ethics police. I'm just a regular individual. Of course, folks, with some individuals talking about their kids, and I'm like, I mean, kids gonna do what kids do, and I would think at the time, like you were once a kid, I'm sure you was hell on wheels too. I'm sure you was disobedient. I'm sure that you was unruly, and all of those good things. But that's why it takes two parents and not one parent. I mean, shout out to the single fathers as well as the single mothers, but it takes two for a reason. It takes two to tango, and I believe it takes two to raise children. And I think if that's the case, then in most instances, folks wouldn't have been getting in my vehicle complaining about their kids being badasses. Just a thought. Y'all tell me if I'm wrong. I could be bugging. I know they say one is better than two, but not when it comes to raising children. But again, I can't really speak because I don't got no kids. I have no children, so I can't speak on it. Other things that folks would get in the car and talk about, be a listening ear. The traffic, I definitely agree with that. The traffic was always bad. That was out of both of our controls. The only, true control I really had to that, and the solution was to that was, of course, taking them back roads. You know, there was a few times I took those back roads and got a round of applause. I just laughed. Like, I know where I'm going. But yeah, I just wanted to bring y'all this today. For those that do ride share, those who are pondering about getting into ride share, or those who just don't want to drive their car because life happened and they're not able to drive it, or they're in a place where they don't need a vehicle. I'm sure you all can relate. Please put it in the comments what you all think. Just wanted to bring you all this. Like, share, and subscribe. And you all continue to have a great day. Later. Peace.